This is an incoming transmission from the Jersey Shore.
This is Financial Insanity with Scott McLean, powered by McLean Advisory Group. Today you'll hear some of the most important financial information and wealth-building techniques available anywhere.
Let's get this party started, huh?
Do you have a question for Scott and the team?
Am I on the air?
609-488-4646. That's 609-488-4646.
We'll get that information to them by radio.
Now, Financial Insanity with Scott McLean.
You hear Scott's voice on the radio each week. You've probably even seen him around town. Maybe you've seen his face on some advertising. Maybe you know somebody he's worked with. But how much do you know about Scott the person and how Scott came to be who he is now and the business owner that he is? This is going to be a great show for you to get to know Scott. And remember, if you hear something today, if you have questions, you can always reach Scott and his team, 609-488-4646. And Scott, I just want to really get into it here with you and talk about your background a little bit. How did you get involved with financial services, Scott?
I don't know.
That is fair.
I don't know. I just fell in love with just numbers. I think because of Dad, when I used to play ball, he'd take me out to the ball game and said, "Son, what's 10% of $1,000?" And I'd say, "Dad, I'm fixing to play ball." I was like 8 years old. And then he said, "Well, Scott, you got to answer the question. You can't get out of the car." "Dad, I'm about to play ball. You got to let me go." And we'd have a little tussle. He always won. And I started to understand I didn't like him because he was running numbers all the time and asking questions. And, you know, the older I get, the smarter he is. And I can see that when I think about numbers, it's so valuable. And then, of course, it led into not only numbers, but then finances. Then on top of finances, money and doing budget. I remember Mom and Dad were arguing about finances and, "Ken, why don't you do the checkbook?" Or, "Joan, why don't you do the checkbook?" And I remember hearing that as a little guy, and they weren't arguing, just going back and forth and remembering budgets, numbers. 1966, I was a little bit older. I was, I guess I was a whopping 8 years old, and we just moved to Florida, Jacksonville, Florida. Just hearing how Daddy, when he bought a car, I'd listen. I didn't know what I was doing. Or when he bought a boat, when he bought things, he was really good at numbers, and I didn't even think of it. So if you're going to go back that far, now going up to this age in my life, now I'm a little bit older, 60 plus years older. And now I'm thinking, you know what? Numbers are really important, and finance is so critical when you put numbers to it. And I think that's what made me intrigued. And you know what, Alex? In school, I'll never forget Mr. Brew. I was going to Nyack College and heading into the mission field and looking to be a missionary. And my roommate, Danny, was now actually overseas in Poland, helping out in the Ukraine crisis. And I'll never forget, he always make fun of me because my daddy said, "Scott, you must take financial courses." I said, "Daddy, I'm studying Greek. I'm studying Hebrew. I'm getting involved in the ministry." He goes, "Look, what makes me upset," because he's a trustee on the board, "is pastors who handle money don't know much about money. And you need to know about money. So I want you to take financial courses." Now, let me help you, Alex. This is probably crazy like you. You know, I worked at Eddie's Sunoco right there in Nyack, New York. I pumped gas from a wonderful time at 2:00 in the afternoon till 8:00.
Oof.
I'd go home, I'd study. And then from 1 a.m. to 6 a.m., I'd unload trucks at UPS in Nanuet, New York.
Wow.
I was butt broke and I had no money, but Daddy helped pay some of the bills in college. And I, of course, paid a lot of it too. And I remember when Dad says, "If you don't take college course on finances, then I'm not going to help support you." Well, that was the caveat. So I guess maybe that's where it really hit home when Daddy said, "I'm not going to really help you out." And you know what, Mr. Brew? We were taking a class called statistics. Have you ever taken a class statistics, Alex?
Unfortunately, I was forced to, yes.
You know, I remember raising my hand, and Mr. Brew was a CPA in Similac Milk, and he was going to be overseas, and he was at ATS in the seminary, and he was teaching his way on college kids like me. I'm a young little rat. I guess I was 18 years old, and I raised my hand because he was teaching finance and statistics. I raised my hand and said, Mr. Brew, it looks like you can lie with numbers. He had a big smirk on his face. I'll never forget the smile he had. He said, son, that's what we need. Good businessmen and good businesswomen who understand how people can spin things to make it look good, but frankly, it doesn't. And that's what really turned me on. And I started to gravitate towards the financial world. I think that's where it really, I can't say where it really hit home, from whether it's playing ball to there, but then it really hit home on people. There's no classes that people take in school these days. Even still today, there's no class in elementary school, high school, college, unless you actually sign up for it, that teaches you about money and finance. And I think that's where the emphasis of our firm has been. Let's educate people. Before you invest, let's understand what the heck you're doing, so you don't get caught in the whirlwind of statistical lies. And I think that's really hit me hard, Alex, in my career.
Well, and for people that want some answers to their questions, they can call Scott, 609-488-4646. And, you said it really started with your dad there. And did you find yourself, passing on some of those words of wisdom to your kids and grandkids?
Of course I do. And I do the same thing to them Daddy did to me, like history repeats itself. I do. And every kid has a different lesson. So if it's my daughter with the horses, I'll relate it to her. If it's my grandson playing baseball and buying a new glove, or maybe buying a ball, or maybe buying ice cream, negotiating, talking, and trying to get the best bang for your buck, no matter what child I'm speaking to. And I got a bunch of them. I think that's important. Finances will last the rest of your life.
Yeah, I remember my dad always told me that every dollar I make's already been spent. And I remember that was a little bit depressing, but pretty accurate as I started working. I was okay, I know what my dad was saying. Now, tell me more, Scott, here about your first job. You first started working, and do you have some experiences or some lessons that have kind of carried on with you?
Best of my knowledge, my first job was at a bowling alley in Jacksonville, Florida. It was just opening up. I was cleaning. I was sweeping the floors. And that was my first job. And they needed, part-time help. And that was fun. The experience, I didn't like it. I guess I didn't like somebody have their thumb on my head and tell me when, and putting a number on me and saying, you're worth this. I thought I was worth more. The second biggest thing was, I think, the biggest impact was Mr. Jones, a very close friend of mine. He's passed away. Mrs. Jones is still alive. She's about 96, I think, right around now. And Charlie, and they had the largest fence company in Jacksonville, Florida. I remember going out there, putting up fence. And what I learned about it, hard work. And I loved working. I loved being outside. I just tell me what to do. And that made me excited. And my biggest excitement, why did I work? I had to pay for the gas for the boat. Daddy said, if you want to go water skiing a lot, which was my drug of choice, water skiing, I had to water ski. Frankly, I do that more than anything in the world, and I competed all over the United States. But when I was younger, I had to pay for it myself, and that was a big lesson of making money. And so Mr. Jones gave me a job, and I'll never forget looking at the paycheck, and my paycheck was, well, at $1.85 an hour. That was a lot of money, but I noticed a line. I didn't know what that line was, is Social Security federal tax. I was I didn't understand those numbers. So of course I asked my dad, and he said, son, that's going to be with you the rest of your life. That's inherited. And I understand about taxes, which is why I built the tax practice now going many years forward. But that really hit me, even though the paycheck was so little, even though it was big back then. Why is somebody putting their hand in my pocket? I got to get their hand out of my pocket. That's what I did. Fence work. Amazing.
Well, and Scott, it's great to hear about, your history, learn a little bit more about you, how you got to be where you're at now. Tell me a little bit about now and what it's like to work with you, to be your client. And, do you do things like hold client events and, encourage these people to stay active? And what is it kind of like to interact with you once, come to work with you?
I just had a meeting today with a client, the second meeting. First time I just get to know people, get a relationship to see if there's a fit. Maybe there's a fit with myself, or maybe they don't fit with me. Maybe I fit with them and they don't fit with me, or vice versa. Number one, there's got to be a fit. Number two, I really want them to understand where they're at. I really want to understand, what does retirement look like near or in retirement? Perhaps people are now, maybe they're 45 and 50. They don't know to save money. They're spending all their money on their kids, which is normal. And then they have to play catch up. Money is so critically, and now it's really hard with this market we're going through right now. I think what's important on the education process and the process I work with our clients is, number one, to educate them. Number two, which is why we've been doing, Alex, so many different workshops, whether it's a tax workshop, a social security workshop. We do a estate planning, I call it wills and trust workshop. We do a workshop on investments. And then, of course, investments and taxes. And so many different areas that come into the area of finance, but it breaks down to how does it really fit the person I'm speaking with at that time. And I think by doing that, I really know how to really help them understand what they're going through. If it's a brand new person I met for the first time, or if it's a client's been with me for 15, 20, 30 years. And I've got clients that long with me because now it's going in, it's my 40th year on, going forward, 41st year going on forward. I think it's really important to understand, for me to understand the client and them to understand me. So if it's a good fit, great. It's a great relationship. I think it's important before we even do business together to know each other. And again, to help them understand or educate them. And that's important to me.
Scott, I've enjoyed getting to know you and talking with you, and very enjoyable experience for me. And you really teach me a lot as well. And if people had questions, how could they get a hold of you, Scott?
I'd love them to write down their questions, to write down their thoughts. Maybe they've been like myself, working their tail off for their life, and now they want to preserve their assets or put them in the right place. I'd love to hear from people at 609-488-4646. If you have questions, I probably have answers for sure. 609-488-4646. Write them down. I feel free to talk to you off the air.
More financial insanity with Scott McLean on the way.
Scott McLean at McLean Advisory Group often talks about the difference between retirement savings and retirement income. It isn't necessarily how much money you have saved that's most important. It's having a steady stream of income in retirement no matter how long you live. Scott has strategies that can help you create consistent monthly income for the rest of your life. He can help you make important decisions today so you can have the income you need in retirement. Having a big nest egg is great, but how will it provide you with the income you need for as long as you live? The number to get more information from Scott at McLean Advisory Group is 609-488-4646. That's 609-488-4646. Turn your portfolio into a plan with help from Scott McLean. 609-488-4646. Investing involves risk. Firm offers insurance services. Investment advisory services are offered through Bell Point Asset Management, LLC.
Frankly, you could have your grandkids tweet out to your friends or go on the Facebook or Instagram or whatever it is and say, I got great information from Scott.
And you left out TikTok there as you're rambling off the different social media being used by the kids today. You got to remember that TikTok.
Oh, that's right. Tickety-tock.
This is Financial Insanity with Scott McLean, presented by McLean Advisory Group.
Today, we are talking about why it's important to work with an investment advisor who can help you navigate the complex legal and tax landscape. Oh, yeah, it's a lot out there. Remember, if you have any questions, the number 609-488-4646, 609-488-4646. This is Financial Insanity with Scott McLean, McLean Advisory Group. And Scott, Please talk to me a little bit about why it's important to discuss retirement's complex legal and tax issues with an advisor.
I want to drive to Florida.
Okay.
The worst place to drive from New Jersey, Alex, is when you get to that D.C. belt. I think many of you can really relate to the D.C. belt. So frankly, when we're hauling our horses, I actually put the map on. I wake my wife up since I'm driving the 6-horse.
Sure.
I just don't want to. I want to go on the outer belt. Everybody knows what I'm talking about, because you get stuck in the middle of the DC traffic. It is a flippin' nightmare, and of course, especially when you're pulling animals. Why do I tell you that? Well, in the preparation, I actually have my GPS set up, and then of course we have water in the stalls. We have hay in the stall. It's a lot of work when you're moving animals from point A to point B. It's a lot of work when you're planning a trip. And when you plan a trip, do you have, in my mind, do I have enough tools to maybe, what if the tires go flat? Who do I call? What if something happens? And it happened to us just last year when it was a terrible accident my daughter and my wife got into.
Right.
But notwithstanding, when you're in preparation for a long trip, by the way, you don't stop. For those of you who are unaware of animals, when you're driving horses, you don't stop. It's about a 16 to 18-hour drive where we're going, and you just keep going. So obviously you take a couple potty breaks, maybe get a little something to eat, but it's a nonstop trip. And the horses, of course, need to get their self set up when they get there. What am I talking about? Planning for a long trip requires strategic planning. You might not think about checking the air and the pressure and oil, maybe checking the all the lube and the car's up to date, the bearings. Every little item could cause a tremendous nightmare. When it comes to retirement, Alex, I'm not sure if you're aware, but when you're taking money out of your retirement income, that's the tax return. When you're planning to pull money out, it's all of the investments, whether they're IRAs or 401ks or 403bs, whether they're your non-qualified money, meaning non-qualified money that is taxed differently, long-term capital gains, short-term capital gains. When you invest in the world of investments, you're investing in either ETFs or mutual funds or stocks, depending which, of course, is the lowest price, lowest fee. And then, of course, you're looking at, how do I now put all of this together and to design a plan where in the first phase of retirement, I call it the go-go years. You're going to screw up in the go-go years, Alex, but that's part of the financial planning process.
Sure.
Which could lead your money to a mousetrap, which is what I put in my book. The financial planning process can lead your money to a mousetrap. What I mean? Not paying attention to taxes, not paying attention to the legal ramifications, and then not paying attention to when you're pulling money out. How is it structured? You know, if you're going through that right now, I think about this all the time, Alex. I would love to speak to you off the air. I've been doing this now. I think it's the 43rd year of my industry, my business. I've been involved. I am still good looking. I may be a lot older, but I can tell you, when it comes to retirement or planning your retirement, 609-488-4646 could be the best number you could ever had. Why? Well, 609-488-4646. That phone number could ask me questions off the air. No cost. We don't charge. We've been this nonprofit radio station for so many years at WBNJ, and the reason we're here is because all we do is offer educational information for you. So when you're in retirement and planning your retirement, you, of course, have a resource center to go to. How do I do this? And what I find in my world of financial planning as a mousetrap, I talk about as the financial planning leads your money to a mousetrap, how do we put all of this together? There's nothing worse than making a cake and leaving the wrong ingredient out or too much salt. It ruins everything. And so when you think about a financial advisor, did the financial advisor look at the tax ramifications, the legal ramifications, and the investment ramifications? Because this could be a real trap that you don't even know you're in. So I'd love to be able to speak to anybody. If you have questions right now, I have answers, 609-488-4646. But notwithstanding, I think, Alex, when we talk about the go-go years, you're going to be blowing a lot of money. I mean, you go down to, when you're taking a trip to Florida, you're going to spend money in gas. If you're really frugal like me, you try to find the best gas price. You want to make sure, is it big enough to turn around this big trailer if you're doing that? Or for those of you in a speed race car, you want to make sure, I don't know how these people are going to be doing these electric cars. You got to stop every so many miles, but I want to keep going. But looking at retirement, Alex, if you're not paying attention, the financial advisor is not looking at the whole picture. It would be like going to a doctor. Alex, let me give you an example of you out there.
Yeah.
Alex comes to me. I am Dr. McLean. And Alex says, well, Scott, I've been having these headaches for the past 5 years coming to you. Do you think, and Alex says, Scott, do you think I should get an MRI? And if I said to Alex, that's a good idea. Alex then says to me, Scott, do you think I should get a EKG and maybe a blood test and urine test? And what do you think? And I say, Alex, that's a great idea. If you didn't fire me immediately, then you're just double dumb. What I mean? If the advisor is not asking deep questions like, do you have a special needs son or daughter? Oh, they're Down syndrome? And they live with you, and how do you plan on taking care of them? That's not a financial discussion, but it really is. How is the child going to be taken care of? These questions are really deep, and they will be part of your retirement. I know you're probably thinking, if you're listening right now, well, what's that got to do with retirement? Everything. Again, when you're taking that trip from New Jersey to Florida, and you want to avoid the DC roundabout, well, you need to really be on your game. So in the early years, it's a go-go years. You might be spending a little bit more money, but having somebody hold you accountable. Then you got the slow go years. You don't want to do as much. You did it. You done it. Maybe you don't want to do it again. And so maybe your spending is a little bit less. And then the no-go years. No, I don't want to do it. Go have fun, kids. Here's a couple bucks. Enjoy life. How is your money spent down? What is the game plan? And this is not a set it and forget it deal. This is almost like going to the masseuse every year because you need a tune-up, or maybe the chiropractor, to making sure your money is in a good place.
Absolutely. 609-488-4646, 609-488-4646. And with just the couple minutes we have left here in this segment, Scott, it's not just about picking the right investments. You have to consider a lot of factors, tax consequences, your estate plan. There's just a lot there to it. And to your point, like a successful road trip, a lot of details, and better to talk to somebody who's been on that trip before than going into it blind for the first time.
And one thing we didn't even bring up, which was healthcare. Yep. That's another left hook right around the corner, let alone your spouse getting sick or disabled. How are we spending money down? Do we open up a trust? How do we hide our money, or I should say reposition our money, so the estate doesn't get squandered away? And then, of course, the nursing care facility gets it out. Now we can use the Medicare, Medicaid planning and hide assets to protect it for who? The children, the wife, the husband. How do we do that? And so when people give us a call at our office, I'd love to take your call at 609-488-4646. By the way, that's our website, just add.com. I'll help you or guide you, try to give you some kind of ideas. And I can tell you the time we spend together will be very valuable for you, not for Scott, for you. I've done this for so long, and I love what I do. I love guiding people. I love more when you hear the information and then you take action. There's nothing worse than these educated dummies who has all this knowledge but never apply it. 609-488-4646. I'd love to talk to you off the air.
And Scott, really important question, the most important question you get all day. What does a bee use to brush its hair?
A bee?
Yeah.
Bumblebee.
Like a bumblebee. What does it use to
Yeah.
brush its little hair?
I don't know.
A honeycomb.
Yeah. Dude, are you drinking?
Yeah.
What's going on here?
No. It's pure gold.
I love it.
609-488-4646 is the number. 609-488-4646. Just add a .com. And real quickly here, about a minute left, but they might get the pleasure of hearing Bonnie on the other end. I know Bonnie is huge to what you do over there, and she's somebody, if you don't get a hold of Scott when you call, Bonnie will point you in the right direction, right?
She will do it. She takes care of my books. She is amazing. And I can tell you, if ever people come into our office, and you want to get more information, I'd love to get your hands on my book, The Three Blind Mice, How the Financial Planning Process Leads Your Money. It's totally complimentary. You come visit with me. That's my gift to you. If you like to read, just don't take it because it's not made for firewood, but it's made to fire you up to get your finances in order.
609-488-4646. Again, 609-488-4646. Just add a .com for the website. When we come back, we're going to continue talking about how to navigate through the complex legal and tax landscape in retirement. Don't go anywhere.
It's nice when you get everything on your list in one place, isn't it? Scott McLean from McLean Advisory Group agrees. That's why he offers comprehensive retirement planning all under one roof. You shouldn't have to go one place for tax planning, another for estate planning, and another for retirement income planning. That's why McLean Advisory Group was started. Scott wanted to build a company that could help families with all aspects of their retirement planning. McLean Advisory Group is more than just convenient. They're knowledgeable and experienced. And for answers for your questions, you can set up a meeting with Scott and his team to talk about your retirement. 609-488-4646. That's 609-488-4646. Use the same number to reach the team online. 609-488-4646.com. Investment advisory services are offered through Bell Point Asset Management, LLC. Firm offers insurance services but does not provide tax or legal advice.
And when you pay down debt, you don't pay down the highest interest rate. The biggest mistake is you pay the highest interest rate card when you should do the snowball effect of paying down debt.
We made it back. This is Financial Insanity with Scott McLean, presented by McLean Advisory Group.
Today, we are talking about why it is so important to work with an investment advisor who can help you navigate the complex legal and tax landscape. Remember, if you have any questions, the number is 609-488-4646, 609-488-4646. I'm Alex Dingman, here with the more important member of the show, Scott McLean, McLean Advisory Group. And Scott, I know we were talking here just about really equating getting ready for retirement a lot like a big road trip. And I thought you had a great analogy. If you just recap again, the road trips that you take here with your horses down to Florida, and what does that have to do with planning for retirement, Scott?
As you plan a road trip, whether you're taking animals or not, it requires a lot of work. And I was talking about before, when you're taking these horses and you're pulling behind the truck, you want to make sure everything's all set up. Animals, the hay, the feed, the water. It's a nonstop trip. It's 18 hours. It's a long trip. It's an arduous trip. And all of a sudden you get a flat tire. Do I have tools? And thinking of every possible indication that could slow your trip down or cause your trip to turn into a catastrophe. Same thing as retirement. And so when I think about all the tax and legal issues where I think a lot of people are just absolutely not paying attention to it, all of a sudden you're doing well and you or your lovely spouse are having a wonderful time. You take a trip, you come back, you're out in the golf field, your golf course, and you swing the ball, you hit the ball, whatever it is. And as you can tell, I'm not a golfer. and all of a sudden you wake up the next day and you're sore. And find out that maybe your blood count's changing, your white counts are changing. Do I have my wife? Can she call because I go to the doctor? Who's the power of attorney for healthcare matters? Just because you're married, she's not or he is not the one in charge. or maybe your partner. They're not in charge unless you have a document called Power of Attorney for Healthcare Matters. Now, why is this important to the finances? As a fiduciary in our firm, I want to make sure my people that I work with, my clients are buttoned up I need just ironclad buttoned up. I want to see the will, power of attorney, living will, healthcare directive. Maybe you need a trust. Maybe you need a special needs trust. Maybe you've got some knucklehead kids that if you gave them $1, they're going to spend $4. Maybe you need a trust that'll delineate or pay out the money on a monthly basis. This is so, so important. By forgetting the taxes is like not filling up the tank all the way to the top, and you have to make unforeseen stops. You can't make unforeseen stops. Or maybe making sure the tires are inflated on this long trip, but you're not paying attention to the tires, and now you're getting worse gas mileage, and you could have a blowout, which could cause your trip from 17 hours to 24 hours. Or maybe you're not paying attention to the legal matters. What happens? God calls you home. Who gets your money? And maybe you have a ex-spouse as a beneficiary you forgot to change when you got remarried. Again, another legal battle just set up down the road. Or maybe you're just sitting there and you think about all the legal aspects and tax aspects, and you pass money on to the children or to the grandchildren. How is that taxable? Can I avoid taxes? Alex, I don't know about you, but if you're not paying attention as a fiduciary for the financial areas, I believe in my mind as the three blind mice, they need to talk to each other. The three blind mice would be your accountant, your financial advisor, and of course your legal. Whether they get together or not, the advisor, I believe, should be the quarterback. He should look at the whole play and then guide as you're going on this journey called retirement. What if this happens? How is it taken care of? What if your lights start to go dim and now you got to go to a nursing home? How does that take place? What are the taxes involved if you have to pull extra money out? Should I put money into a trust? If you're thinking about those questions, well, give yourself a hand. Give yourself a clap. Because if you're thinking about it now, take action. There's nothing worse than brilliant people taking no action. I call them double dumb. Don't be double dumb. Take action. When people give us a call at our studios and ask questions at 609-488-4646, when they ask these questions, Alex, and they give us a call or they go to our website at 609-488-4646.com, we've got some neat things that we're adding to our site to help you think through this. I call it the love affair of finances. Your will or your legal documents, your financial documents, and then your tax documents. They must be looked together almost like, as I say in my book, like when I talk in my book, I talk of the composer. Well, the composer is one. Now we've got the conductor who's going to take the composer's music, go to the wonderful orchestra, and now let's play this beautiful music. Or could it be a disastrous music and it doesn't play out? I can tell you, as a musician, one wrong note can be picked up by everybody. One wrong note in your financial plan could be picked up by the crows and the clowns that show up at the funeral.
Yeah.
Do you have them in your life? I guarantee they're there somewhere. 609-488-4646. Write that number down for yourself. If you have questions, I have answers. And if I don't have answers, not act like a smarty pants, I guarantee you I can call so many people at the push of a button. I can call brilliant people that can answer some questions or get answers for you, because there's nothing worse than going into retirement or going into a long trip and not prepared. This is a nightmare.
Well, and truly smart people surround themselves with even smarter people like you just talked about. And so Scott can be that for you, for your finances. 609-488-4646. Now, Scott, one thing that's very important, and I know you do this, but making sure that you have an advisor who's keeping up with the latest legal and tax changes that could affect your investments, because it's not a set it and forget it. It's not a, well, this was right 10, 20 years ago, I'm sure everything is fine. No, you got to have somebody like Scott McLean there looking at these things and making sure that the right choices are being made at the right times.
You could have said that any better. I think the IRS, this is not a laughing matter, even though the IRS, sometimes people get scared. I think the key is an IRS starts knocking on your door for unpaid taxes or penalty, or now we're in probate. Now we have to pay a whole bunch more money when you could have maybe had set your estate up to be as probate free as possible. Or maybe you don't have the legal documents and your spouse, your child, maybe they don't have a power of attorney, and now you've got to make decisions. By not paying attention to those details, not only causes your car to go off the road, or I should say your finances to go off the road, but it also, this undue stress and worry. I wonder, some of you may be going through a health issue. And if you're going through a health issue right now, I can pray for you. But on top of a health issue, let me get to the nitty-gritty. Do you have a power of attorney? Do you have a backup power of attorney for healthcare matters and or financial matters? Both. There's two different types. And by not paying attention to, I believe, the financial advisor's job, I believe, or I take it personally, if I don't know all about my clients and know what to do if their lights go dim or maybe they go out, or maybe there's a child that maybe we need to protect from money going to the child, we need to open up a trust account. How do I protect this money that's been endowed to me to protect them as a fiduciary? How can I make sure the best of my ability and capability to educate a client in these areas? And I should say my clients are my friends. Am I doing the very best to make sure that you are buttoned up in these areas? And if not, it is my job, I believe personally, to call your lawyer. Hey, I've noticed this in the agreement. How come there's not a backup to the power of attorney? How come there's not a backup to the executor? You know, I hear the daughter is Down syndrome. How come you don't have a special needs trust planned inside the estate? And when I see this, it's almost like all the advisors today, most of them, not all of them, just want to say, what can I get? Not how can I help? How can I get something out of you? Oh, and they push it off. Like Daddy always said, don't push off a problem when you can handle it.
Yep.
Well, let's call this guy, let him handle it. No, it should be the quarterback, the financial guy or gal in your life that would make those calls, because chances are you don't know the questions you're asking, but the financial person involved should know those questions.
609-488-4646 if you have questions. The number for Scott and his team, 609-488-4646. Just a couple moments left, but I wanted you to hit on something because you were talking and going through the different details that someone must think about. And a lot of the stuff, it's not fun to think about. You don't want to think about having a plan for your health problems in the future. I want to talk about going on a trip. You know, those are the kind of things. But what you can do, Scott, is you can step in, and because sometimes when we're talking about our own money or our own lives, our heart can get in the way of our own head. Meaning, what we care about, and when we want something to be true, and sometimes that can mask what we should be doing, and that's where you can step in, Scott. And not that you're heartless, I know you care about everybody that you're dealing with, but you can also look at things critically and think about, okay, what makes the most sense? What's the smartest thing here? What's going to have the least amount of bad consequences? And sometimes you have to step in and say, hey, I know this is really important to you, and I know why it is. But let me explain to you here why this is an alternative way to think about things that could actually be better for you in the long run.
The questions I ask people, or my advisors ask people, are questions that you might have thought about but kind of push it away because it's too hard to think about. Like maybe your spouse's lights are going dim. Maybe they have to go to a nursing home. Do you take them home or not? How do I handle it? How do I handle the money? These are really, really questions that it hits your heart and you don't want to face it. And I'd rather bring it out up front versus wait until the last minute and causing more trouble, more problems later. So you've got to ask these hard questions. For example, let's say you have a son or a daughter, and if they inherit your money, are they going to blow it? Or maybe they've got a wife, or I should say a spouse, a husband or wife, a spouse that, you lost your relationship with your son or daughter because the spouse pulled you away from your child. How do you pass the money on? These are real questions that you don't want to talk about because this is really close to heart. And you kind of get, I've had people come to my office, Alex, and we talk about these areas because, again, it's about your money and buttoning up your estate. But again, we've got to ask deep questions. And how do we pass the money on? And all of a sudden you have an estranged child because of a spouse, possibly. Or maybe they have a special needs son or daughter, because we handle a lot of that. And all of a sudden they have their estate set up wrong. You pass away, your wife, your spouse passes away. The money goes to your son, but your son passed away. Now, how does that money go down? Do you want it to go to the spouse or your children? Well, maybe you need a testamentary trust to make sure it goes to the child, and maybe a different trustee, because you maybe don't want the spouses to handle it. You want someone else because they could get remarried, and now your money goes to the new family. These are questions you don't want to think about. No one wants to talk about your kids passing. By the way, it happened in my family. You guys understand, I've been through some challenges that I'm able to take from my life experiences, put it inside of my financial practice, and help who? Help those of you listening right now. Because when you've been through a bump in the road, well, maybe you just know how to avoid that bump for someone else. And they don't have to go through the anxiety, stress, excessive taxes, and the crows and the clowns that eventually shows up at the funeral. That's chapter 11 of our book, Alex. If you want chapter 11, I'll email to you. Call Bonnie, 609-488-4646. Ask for chapter 11. We can email it to you today with totally no cost, no obligation. I just give Bonnie a call, 609-488-4646, and say, Bonnie, I'd like to read chapter 6 of Scott's book. I'm not a good reader, but I'd like to read that. I can tell you, you will love it. You'll hear my life experiences and action steps that you can apply today, not tomorrow. Don't be double done with all this knowledge. Take action. Don't put it off.
And we won't talk about the irony of a financial advisor having a chapter 11 in their book, but
that's true.
609-488-4646. 609-488-4646. When we come back, we're going to have some more fun, more financial insanity with Scott McLean on the way.
Scott McLean at McLean Advisory Group often talks about the difference between retirement savings and retirement income. It isn't necessarily how much money you have saved that's most important. It's having a steady stream of income in retirement no matter how long you live. Scott has strategies that can help you create consistent monthly income for the rest of your life. He can help you make important decisions today so you can have the income you need in retirement. Having a big nest egg is great, but how will it provide you with the income you need for as long as you live? The number to get more information from Scott at McLean Advisory Group is 609-488-4646. That's 609-488-4646. Turn your portfolio into a plan with help from Scott McLean. 609-488-4646. Investing involves risk. Firm offers insurance services. Investment advisory services are offered through Bell Point Asset Management, LLC.
News, tips, the financial tricks, all right here.
It's the kind of devil we need around here.
This is Financial Insanity with Scott McLean, powered by McLean Advisory Group.
There are some words of wisdom that have stood the test of time, and now we'll share some timeless advice for you to keep in mind for your retirement. Scott, I'm going to give you a quote, and I want you to talk about what that has to do with retirement planning. First quote is from Ben Franklin.
Old Ben.
Old Ben. A penny saved is a penny earned. What do you think about that one as far as retirement's concerned?
I think everybody knows that one, but I think as I tell my family, I'll do today when we're younger. I tell this to all young people: do today what others won't do, so you'll have what others won't have later in life. I think that's important. A penny saved is a penny earned, because it's hard to save money. You're raising kids, you're crying, and maybe at nights for those self-employed people listening to the show right now, you're seeing the thing go up in price and the cost expensive, and you still got to save for that retirement. If you're heading into retirement, you still got to put money away, and a penny saved is a penny earned. That's right, because you're paying the price now, so you don't have to pay the price later. I think it's so important to save money, to put it away, and put it away in the right place. That's important.
Let's go ahead and keep it with Ben Franklin. He was a pretty smart guy, by the way. So he had another quote here, and tell me what this means to you, Scott. Wealth is not his that has it, but his that enjoys it.
Wow, that's a big statement. And wealth is not his that has it. Well, you know what? Nothing's ours as far as I'm concerned. We've been blessed from above. And when we're blessed from above, the question is, what are we doing with this wealth we've been given? Or maybe little money. Some people listening right now, Scott, I don't have a lot of wealth. Well, enjoy your life. Enjoyment is different for everybody. Enjoyment comes from the heart. And of course, if you have more money, you could, of course, enjoy it with others. But it's not about the money. It's about the time you spend. It's about keeping healthy. And then if you have more money, you can do a lot more stuff. So wealth is really our money. We're blessed from above. And again, what does it mean to me? It's enjoying those around us. In my case, I love working. This is my enjoyment. I love the passion. I love the animals at our farm. But I guess the question is, what am I enjoying the time I have, no matter what I have? Am I being blessed with what I have? We have so much in America compared to overseas. And I can tell you one thing, we need to be thankful every day with what we have.
Yeah, that's very well said, Scott. And I don't think we could do some memorable quotes without at least having one from Mr. Twain. He wrote a lot, and I know that you've written a book as well. You've mentioned it a few times, Scott, Three Blind Mice. And, we could spend a whole show going on the book, but just conceptually, can you kind of just explain the title there, what you mean, and why, given that information, why you've designed your office like you have?
Well, now being in the business for a few weeks now, since 1983, being licensed, and now here it is a couple of years later, you kind of learn a few things. You see, in the early years of my practice, I thought I knew a lot. As my dad would say, the older I get, the smarter my dad becomes. And I can tell you, I can answer that one for sure. The reason I put that together is because when I meet so many people on a daily basis and work with my clients, what I find is, as an advisor, as a fiduciary in this industry, for being licensed for so many years, your definition of conservative is different than John Doe or Susie Q. Your definition of safety is different than, well, John Doe or Susie Q. So when I think about the Three Blind Mice, almost inevitably, when I ask this very basic question, when the advisor looked at the will, power of attorney, living will, the financial advisor, and when he or she looked at your tax returns on a yearly basis, what did they say? Alex, inevitably, I get this answer. Well, they really never looked at it. Well, they never even spoke about my taxes. Yet finances hit all those areas. Wouldn't you agree? Alex,
Yeah.
When you go get a paycheck, you're getting hit by what? Taxes.
Oh, yeah.
And of course, your wife is asking, where's the money?
Of course.
Well, the tax man got it, right? So the Three Blind Mice is, they in and of themselves could do a wonderful job. This morning, I had a phone call, and the husband was telling me about his son, a beautiful gentleman, 44 years old. And he said, Scotty, you know what? I fixed my will. I said, you did? He goes, yes. You remember when you kind of yelled at me? I said, I don't yell at anybody. He said, no, you kind of did. I could tell by your eyes and by your body posture, because Alex, his son, in the will and in his investment beneficiaries, his son was the beneficiary. Now, on the surface of this show right now, Alex, you probably don't see a problem. But what I knew is his son had Down syndrome. His son was going to inherit the money. And I encouraged him, please don't let your son inherit the money. Let's open a trust to preserve the assets you and your sweetie built your entire life. And if you pass away, it's going to go to your son. That's fine. But then what's going to happen? Well, we have a different problem. We have him getting off of all the government subsidy that his son well deserved. You got a lot of people getting stuff out there they don't deserve. I'll make that real clear. But his son deserved it. Didn't deserve Down syndrome. His son deserves the money. But why not put it into a trust so it doesn't get evaporated away by the government? And so when I spoke to him, I was so happy that when I spoke to John, I said, John, I'm so glad that you and Alice did that. I'm so glad you took it. Well, you told us to, Scott. I said, well, I didn't really tell you, but I highly encouraged you to. He goes, no, you told us. Now, I'm not a lawyer, Alex. As you know, I have lawyers in our staff, and we have tax people on our, with a moment's throw, I can ask questions. If I don't have to be the smartest person or the brightest bulb, I just know who to call. So when it comes to Three Blind Mice, what I find in my industry, people are not asking really intimate questions, such as, in this case, John's child. And what happens if John passes away, his wife, Alice, well, she doesn't know really much about taxes and investments, but she leans on someone who does. And so I'm so thankful they've been clients for so many years, because they didn't have that high touch. Now, that doesn't mean I have to be brilliant on those areas. Heck, I'll call their accountant. I'll call their lawyer. I don't care who they use, but I think that's important to understand. Me as a fiduciary, financial advisor, to look at the whole picture, not just what can I get, but how can I help? And that's where I believe it starts with that first meeting, getting to know the client from day one, understanding what their concerns are, their worries are. And I guarantee when John said to me, Scott, I feel so much better. I said, you got a load off your shoulders, don't you, Johnny? He said, I can't believe it. It just really opened up my eyes how important those documents. I think we did one show, Alex, we talked about the financial drawer, the clutter in the financial drawer, the junk drawer. Well, this junk got cleared out. They have now a game plan, which I encourage, which is why I wrote the book, The Three Blind Mice, how the financial planning process leads your money to a mousetrap. And this is where we want to try to clean up as financial industry, and which is what made me write the book many years ago. And we finally went to publish with Simon Schuster. So it was really a very good thing off my mind. I want people to get their hands on it. So I think that's what's so important.
Absolutely. And Scott, we got about a minute left in today's program. Please take us home, letting people know how they can contact you.
Well, I'd love to. If anybody has any questions, write them down. I think what's important is you write them down at 609-488-4646. You can call after you write them down. Why? Because it's your question, not mine. It's your concern, not mine. The moment you share it with me, it becomes my concern, and I'll do the best I can. And if I can't answer questions, 609-488-4646. I will tell you, I'll do my best to find out where you can get those questions answered. Or if I have to seek out the attorney or the accountant, I will seek those out to get a question that you may have on your mind, because I can tell you it's about your finances and about where it goes, but more importantly, how you feel you want it to be delivered to your families upon the day the Lord calls you home. That's important to me.
This presentation may contain information which has undergone regulatory or other significant change since its original recording. The The information on this program is educational in nature and is not intended to be a recommendation for any specific investment product, strategy, plan, tax, or legal advice. Information presented is believed to be factual and up to date, but we do not guarantee its accuracy. Discussions and answers to questions do not involve the rendering of personalized investment advice and is limited to the dissemination of general information and may not be suitable for members of the listening audience. Communications such as this are not impartial and are provided in connection with advertising and marketing for McLean Advisory Group. Prior to making any investment or financial decisions, an investor should always seek advice from a financial, insurance, legal, or tax professional. McLean Advisory Group and or Scott McLean offer investment advisory and financial planning services through Bell Point Asset Management, LLC.
This radio show is a paid placement.
It's nice when you get everything on your list in one place, isn't it? Scott McLean from McLean Advisory Group agrees. That's why he offers comprehensive retirement planning all under one roof. You shouldn't have to go one place for tax planning, another for estate planning, and another for retirement income planning. That's why McLean Advisory Group was started. Scott wanted to build a company that could help families with all aspects of their retirement planning. McLean Advisory Group is more than just convenient. They're knowledgeable and experienced. And for answers for your questions, you can set up a meeting with Scott and his team to talk about your retirement. 609-488-4646. That's 609-488-4646. Use the same number to reach the team online. 609-488-4646.com. Investment advisory services are offered through Bell Point Asset Management, LLC. Firm offers insurance services but does not provide tax or legal advice.